Hello, welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, you can always send questions and comments to the Facebook live stream. So good evening for all of you watching us live, or if not, it's good watching you later. Also, for the YouTube live stream as well. So good evening, hello to all of you watching on YouTube. So we'll be hanging in and out of the chats the best we can, but it's great to see all of you here, both in person and virtually later. So, you know me, my name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia, which is a little quiet for obvious reasons. Let's head it over to Jason Richards.
We're not seeing anybody in person. It's all virtual, and my child is screaming in the background.
Yes. So just like every work Zoom call right now. That's great.
Yes, absolutely. It's just, I just have to remember not to scream back while we're streaming. Anyway, Jason Richards, past master, Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C., and darn glad to be here.
Darn happy to have you.
Means the wife gets to put the kid to bed.
Juan Sepulveda, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast and the Gentleman's Brotherhood. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Juan. And last but not least, Robert Johnson.
Hello there.
Hello.
Hey, Robert Johnson, Space Novum Lodge, 1183 in Libertyville, Illinois, and then past master over at Waukegan 78 in Waukegan, Illinois. Thanks.
No. Thank you. So here we are. Up to episode 299. Man, seems like yesterday we had just started this thing.
Seems like yesterday we were just recording episode 200.
That's true. That's true, because you know what that means. Next week, or sooner, is episode 300. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And that's why we want to thank especially the patrons who've been supporting the show for the past year to kind of keep this thing going, doing some audio and visual upgrades. I know Jason's got an upgrade ready to go. So this has been really helpful to
for episode 300. I'll be using it.
Wow, fancy new tech! Look at that. So if you want to help out and support the show, it all goes straight back into the show. You can head it over to patreon.com/The Masonic Roundtable, and that will help.
You bought me a webcam, yay!
I don't know. You have a face for radio, so I don't know if it's an upgrade or a downgrade, but either way, we're stuck with it.
The lens broke in the last one, so
that's true. Truth hurts. So thank you to all our patrons. So tonight, in preparation for episode 300, we have a special topic lined up. But before we do, we want to set up episode 300 with episode 299. Juan was the mastermind behind tonight's episode, and we wanted to give him the opportunity to lay the foundation, as it were, of what we're here to talk about tonight. So over to you, Juan.
Thank you, John. I wanted to start with a quote that's attributed to the Buddha. It says, "Change is never painful. Only the resistance to change is painful." And I'm pretty sure if you've proposed any kind of adjustment, change, improvement, alteration, modification to anything in Lodge, regardless of the intention, the resistance to change is real. And I say, fight the resistance.
Aha.
Fight the resistance. And the reason we choose this topic is because we want to, like John prefaced, we want to prepare the conversation. We want to prepare the palette for what we are going to discuss for our episode 300. And what we want to do now is talk about this resistance to change. It's not unusual. It's not even abnormal for there to be resistance to change. However, most of the time, the resistance is a visceral one. It's one that is either ill-informed or is emotionally driven. And I think as seekers of light and seekers of truth, it is our responsibility to make sure that when we are trying to convey an idea, when we're trying to convince the brothers of a change, that we come at it from an informed place, that we come at it from a point of view of attempting to make things better so that the interest of the entire organization, or at the very least the lodge, is in mind, and that we present it in a way that it's going to be at least met with at least resistance as possible. And so today we'll go back and forth and talk about different aspects that your lodge may be facing change, and mainly an organization that does not adapt, that does not roll with the punches, that does not find resilience, is one that is doomed to perish. And if you love Masonry, if you love your lodge, if you love what you've created thus far, unless you're willing to change for the better and make improvements to the lodge and to the procedures, then you'll see it die a long and painful death.
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
And so
just go ahead.
no, it's just the metaphor that comes to mind when you bring that up is this idea of the sunk cost fallacy of how long do you put up with mediocrity? How long do you put up with patching up the old before you just have to make the inevitable change for the better? If you have an old car and you have an old beater car that's rusted through, and even though it might be paid off, it might not, you know that you could, one, do better, two, you're putting more money into it than the car is worth. And at some point, we all have to make that decision to eventually just get rid of the car. It's not worth the investment anymore. But that doesn't mean you just walk around anymore. No, that means you eventually will find another car. So we're not saying throw Freemasonry away at all. Just the opposite. We've invested so much in tire changes and brake changes and transmission fluid and transmissions that it's time to put that blood, sweat, and tears that you've given for so long into the fraternity, to flip it over and to actually get the better car that you deserve.
Here's a question, though. If you change out every single aspect of the car, is it still a car? Is it still the same car?
How many years, Robert, before your cells completely refresh themselves?
7.
7 years, 37.5 trillion. You're just the driver in a, well, whatever you are.
So if you've been a Master Mason for over 7 years, you literally are not the same man you were when you came into Masonry.
Literally.
You are literally not.
Well, the good news is that your consciousness doesn't necessarily refresh like your body. So,
Or does it?
You do become more jaded. I can tell you that.
I would hope that in 7 years your consciousness has changed. I mean, we are trying to build yourself, right? Perspectives and all that good stuff.
As a very wise old Mason once told me in Colorado, Masonry doesn't make good men better; it makes good men bitter.
Yikes!
Was
that Kevin Townley?
No, it was actually a co-Mason who told me that.
So, even all of that reminds me. There's also a quote by Stephen King where he says, "Resistance to change is proportional to how much the future might be altered by any given act." And you think of the complexity. You see, you hold on to this for the longest time, and this resistance to the change only exacerbates the consequence that can come out of the decision. And the last thing we want to do is to avoid change for the sake of change. We have to become comfortable with the idea of change. Now, obviously you've heard all the jokes about how many Masons does it take to change a light bulb, and a past master, change, what do you mean change? But it's natural. It's a normal human response to the unknown. We know that a change or a decision made is going to have an effect on future things, and that uncertainty of how things are going to turn out, it makes people very uncomfortable, and that's completely understandable. But we have to become resilient, and we have to have the flexibility to change things that we're not changing just because that's how we used to do them. And I want to talk about some specific things because I really want us to be practical, and for brothers to take something to lodge with them, or at least to virtual lodge, or prepare for when they come back for the lodges to be more resilient. I find this to be a great opportunity now that many of us have not been able to go to lodge for a while, and have had a taste of the possibilities of still engaging in fellowship in a virtual manner, in still conducting some sort of Masonic activities. And many times these activities that we've engaged in over this pandemic have been very, very positive. They have been very enlightening. They have been very fulfilling. And I don't think they have taken anything away from Masonry. So I'll break the ice with a very real example. And if you can't comment on it with your ideas, even if you have objections that you think people are going to toss out whenever things like this are proposed, just go right ahead. And what I have in mind first and foremost is communication. When we talk about the effectiveness of communication with the members of the lodge. Now, over the years, we've become accustomed to a trestle board. And for those who don't know, a trestle board includes, for in most forms, it is just a pamphlet that is mailed or handed out, just like they used to do in church. I don't know, they do this in your churches?
Oh,
you
yeah.
go to church and then, you get a little pamphlet of what's coming up next week, when it's the marriage groups meeting, and a message from the pastor, a message from the senior deacon or usher or whatever. And we've held on to this little pamphlet with such fervor and such passion. But whoever reads them, and like when you grab them, what
Only
you
to
do
throw
with
it
them?
away right after the service.
Exactly, or you put it in the car.
It's
to
the
not
old
look at it
Mitch
again.
Hedberg. Mitch Hedberg said, when people hand him a pamphlet, it's like saying, "Hey, you throw this away."
Mm-hmm.
Here, you throw this trestle board away.
Yeah, especially in Vegas. That's how. That's been my experience in Vegas. Everyone's giving you something to throw away.
You mean baseball cards?
The clickers.
The little
They do
baseball
all
cards?
kinds of- Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So how could we change the trestle board in order for it to be part of the evolving way of effectively communicating with the membership? And among the tools that I use in my business, I have email management systems in which I can input the information of the people that want to stay in touch with me, and I can set a specific number of messages to go out, either automated or to go out whenever I have something to say. And most of us have email today. Most of us have access to the internet. So we could have the trestle board across the board be digital.
What about that one guy, though? There's that one guy who's 90 years old, doesn't have a computer, still has a flip phone.
So
what are we going to
At
do
the
about
risk
that?
Our brethren don't have access to the internet, which is why we still mail out our trestle board.
I gotta read you this because I thought this was like major progressive. The Grand Lodge of what in the world?
I
Grand
haven't
Lodge
heard of
of
that one. Are they
Illinois.
clandestine?
Yes.
They're global.
The Grand Lodge of Illinois decided to send out basically the thing that allows us to meet online, and it says,
Well, that's great. So, like, we're good to go, right? In Illinois.
well, hold on, because
That's amazing.
it's
Communication's wide open. In a
It
post-COVID
says-
world, what's the
where is it?
downside?
Here we go. Letter to lodges. Yeah, this thing. It says, in the hopes of allowing lodges to handle the business of the lodge, we've put together a set of guidelines for lodges to use to conduct online meetings. We're well aware that some of our members do not use computers, and so they will not have the ability to attend these meetings. But we have to move forward, and hopefully we'll be back to meeting in lodge rooms soon.
Or will we?
Well, what I thought was great, though, was we're well aware that some members don't have access to computers, but we have to move forward. That was just like probably the most, well, the week that came out, there was a lot of things that came back from my Grand Lodge that were super progressive, and I like almost my brain exploded. because these circumstances there's no like rhetoric to move around it. You have to meet it head on because it's reality, and there's no false narrative that you can claim when I mean, you could put, the real stuff is right in front of you. Like, what are you going to do? You can't do anything about it. And you got a situation, you have to handle it. No amount of right wing, left wing, political anything is going to fix it. And so the lodge has to do something. Unless you're one of those states who just decided, like, we're just going to open. So.
That's true.
Who knows?
Georgia.
So you say some people will not be receiving it because they don't have email or they don't have access to the internet? How many of them? Like, really, how many of them?
Well,
2?
lots. There's
10?
lots. It's unbrotherly.
20%.
Yeah.
20%.
All right, so even if it's 20%, the effort to mail out just 20% of physical printouts from the digital version, don't go through the trouble of designing a new one. No. You get a printed version of what everyone is seeing on the computer, and just fold that up and mail it. That's an option, but also give them an opportunity to opt out. Just like, when was the last time you hopped into your bank account and a little pop-up says, "Hey, we've noticed you're still getting paper statements. Want to go green?" A lot of people are going to go green. So even some of those who you may think are too old to have internet or are too old to be on the email or have some reason why they don't have access to it, maybe accommodate to them, but get them involved. Ask them. They're not in lodge. Most of the time, these people that we're advocating for, or that this Random Brother is advocating for a printed version of the trestle board, is not in lodge. Sometimes it's not even in state. But let's get them. Let's make them part of the conversation. Do you want to receive the trestle board? Because if we're packaging this together to send it to you so that you can stay abreast of what's happening, and you're not even reading it, you find it as a burden. It's like, I don't care. Like, I don't live there anymore. Toss it.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that's something that Robert, you did a couple of years ago as secretary, that you used like MailChimp or something like that, and you actually had data, be still my beating heart, of actual open rates. And do you remember like a ballpark of what those open rates were like?
Yep, I sure do. We would do a lodge newsletter, right? So it was the trestle board. I wrote the whole thing. I'd grab some, master's message, all that good stuff. Sometimes I ghostwrite it. And then that would go out to 350 people who were inside of our Maury database that had email addresses. Of the 340, there were probably 260 that had email addresses in the system. And of those 260 people, on average, over the course of 3 years as secretary, so at least 36 trestle board emails.
Right.
On average, 10 people opened it. And primarily it was the one or two of the primary lodge officers, not always, and some randos in other states. So it wasn't ever even like opened by anybody, which is why I stopped doing it. I just said, screw this noise. This is not worth the time. And then I would print copies and leave them at the lodge. And,
so like
in 20 years,
3%, or more or less.
Yeah. About 3%. So, but the funny part is, right, like, just like you go to lodge right now and you find the cork board in the kitchen that's been there's some stupid picture that's like sun beaten and it's been hanging there for 40 friggin' years.
Have you been to my lodge?
That's every lodge.
How did you know? Exactly.
Or like something about the Masonic home that's since closed. It's from 30 years ago. And you just want to take the newspaper. It's like, what is this garbage? This isn't like nostalgia. This is garbage. Like, if you mean something, put it somewhere. Put it in a scrapbook. But yeah, so the moral is those newspapers that I was putting together, those are going to be around in 30 years. Somebody's going to find them in the library and go, what is this garbage? Exactly, it's garbage. Throw it away, please.
Or so the TMR bookmarks that I keep leaving on the bulletin boards of lodges in the district that keep getting
Hey, so, thinking about the topic for tonight's show, imagine if you have, like, a high-page business consultant. Think of, like, if you ever watch, like, Bar Rescue with, like, John Taffer. He comes in, he says, tell me about your failing bar. This is where your management sucks. This is where your hygiene and cleanup sucks. Here's where they're not trained. But can take a fresh set of eyes and help turn that business around. So imagine
that would
if you
never work for Freemasonry, because Freemasonry is not a business job.
Get out of here. There's a book that says otherwise. So anyway, imagine if a high-paid business consultant that knows absolutely nothing about Freemasonry walked in through your, let's just call it a failing lodge door, because I know there's always exceptions to the rule, but let's focus on a failing, what you can imagine in your mind of those lodges that they're only a couple of years away from closing.
96% of lodges in existence.
So they're close. They're close. Imagine he walks in, knows nothing about Freemasonry, and goes, "Wait a minute, you're mailing out a calendar to your members? Yeah, and how do you know they're getting any value out of that, right?"
And also, John, don't forget this. When I was a district deputy grand master and a secretary and a member, that means I got the same letter 3 times, because nobody crosses that stuff. They're like, oh, we already got one. Nope.
Yeah. So it's just because we're so accustomed.
And that doesn't even count the percentage of trestle boards and mailings that get returned because the member moved without telling the lodge, or the member passed.
Right. So all this stuff that we either take for granted because it's the way it's always been done, or we look over. It could be either, or that we look over because, well, it's a brother and he's trying his best, and we take empathy instead of looking for results. We put up with mediocrity in the sake of harmony, which is a core tenet to what we believe in. But
wait,
not
putting up with mediocrity or harmony?
Huh. What's the difference? So
it's unbrotherly to have expectations.
It's
of
unbrotherly. That's funny. There's your quote of the night. Yeah.
Put that on a t-shirt.
So I love. I have to say, Gary Meisner had a great idea. Lodge rescue with the cast of TMR. We just go in, kick down the door of a lodge. Worshipful Master, get your act together.
No. I need Juan to come in and in Spanish say, shut it down, like Gordon Ramsay.
Ciérralo. ¿Quién donó eso? Eso está viejo. Eso no sirve para nada. Bótalo. Bótalo.
That's
There
it.
you go.
Lodge rescue.
But that was donated by brother. I don't care. Cállate la boca.
Yeah, that thing is worthless. Get it out of here. And that's what we're talking about. Is that, again, the expectation of, if someone who knows how to run an effective organization, let's not even call them business consultant, knows how to run an effective organization, would actually challenge a lot of the things that we get pushed up for resistance for, which is the whole point of tonight's show. Is there comes a point where you have to be resilient, as Juan was saying, and not accept no anymore. You not accept, that's the way it's always been done. Not accept the fact that, brother so-and-so who passed away 20 years ago donated that to the lodge. There comes a time when we have to rise up against the resistance.
Yep. I'm gonna give you an example, but in respect to my obligation, I won't be specific. So the discussion went somewhat like this.
Sounds like a mediocre
Brothers.
example already.
Yeah. Don't expect much. Okay, here's the example. Brothers, we have one of these things, and it's old and it's not working. We want to make a motion so that we can actually find a new place for it, throw it away, or donate it. The good news is, brothers, that brother such and such came up with a brand new one of these that works, and it's amazing, and he's going to donate it to the lodge. All we have to do is take this old one that doesn't work, that doesn't look good, is not used, and replace it with this brand new one that a brother donated. It's worth $1 gajillion. It's actually a few $1,000s depending on the brand and who. Anyway, you would be amazed about the resistance that came out of that conversation. But why do we need a new one? Because this one doesn't work, and it's old, and it's ugly, and we have received an offer for a new one that works. But such and such brought that to us and donated to us. It's old and it doesn't work, and we already have a brother committing to give us a brand new one. I could not believe it. All the different objections that we were getting from people because they didn't want to change the damn thing. Now, I understand that there might have been some emotional attachment to that old non-working artifact. Okay? But it was irrational. It was solely emotional. It had no room or no place, in my opinion, in an organization that is going to foment. Am I saying that right? Fomentar. That is going to
Ferment. Mm-hmm.
It's going to ferment this stuff.
Well, I guess that could be acceptable.
Yeah, it's going to suggest.
Wait, hold on. You said ferment, but
I said it
like
'cause John
people don't ferment.
No,
People
it's
rot.
fomenting dissent.
That's true.
We're rotting.
What are you playing at? I'm fomenting. Well, I'm supposed to be fomenting peace.
We just got some love from Amadeus. Thank you so much, Amadeus. We love you greatly. He says, "Down with the resistance. Long live the empire." Spoke like a true Jedi. Love that guy. But it is incredible the amount of resistance we faced when that afterwards we were talking like, how is this possible? Like, did they not listen to what we were saying? Our organization is one that foments the study of the liberal arts and science, at the very least logic.
Okay.
But not even.
Do we teach that? Is that something that we expect our brothers to have a good grounding of logic?
In theory.
Depends on whether or not they went through a one-day conferral.
Easy. At one of my lodges that I was a member of, there was a I don't know why the treasurer never gets a desk. They always get like the card table, And I'm like, the secretary gets a desk? Why doesn't the treasurer have a desk? He's over the secretary technically. So at that lodge, we got my treasurer a desk. But to put the desk in, I had to move the organ out.
Oh
Holy
no!
yes,
What
word.
organ?
Yeah. So the organ that you can go to Goodwill and you'll find there, and it'll be like $10 and weighs 700 pounds.
Right.
That's the kind of organ, right? And I was like, who wants this thing? No emails. I'm like, okay, it's leaving. I'm getting rid of it. Somebody was like, oh, I'll take it. Okay, cool. Guess what? I will bet dollars it's still there 6 years later, parked on a trolley with a sign that I put on it that says, careful, it'll tip at any time. I bet it's still there. Yeah.
You should
That's
have
the
given.
resistance.
You should have given a date, a pickup date, for that.
Yep.
Like, if you ain't here
That
within
would imply me
48
caring
hours,
too much.
Fair.
And
I don't care that much.
You guys only have one organ, losers.
Only one.
Like I've been. I swear, I've been to lodges where there are 3, 4 organs.
That's so
And
crazy. But like to your
Yeah.
point, Juan, when you were talking about replacing something old and new, like in that respect, it's like get rid of the organ. Oh, and we put up a cool desk, and there's an iPad on a music stand with like an audio out Bluetooth thing to a cool speaker and a surround system for the lodge, and the guy can sit there and up and down with the levels and gain and fade in and out for music. That's your guy. But no, because that organ is like Gary Meisman in the chat, ain't Mabel's couch. People just don't want to get rid of it.
Yep.
We can talk about psychology later, but yeah.
I love Michael Overturf in the Facebook chat says it's flipping lodges, TMR edition. So I love the metaphor. Like I want to see some of your best home makeover type shows in a lodge experience. What would that look like?
Wait,
Actually,
who in this
do
group
that?
is Tarek and who is Christina?
Wait, but maybe we can do this. Maybe there's a lodge who says, "Hey, TMR guys, come on out," and we do it.
Wasn't there a lodge for sale in Indiana or something?
Eh? Fresh set of eyes never hurts. That's all I'm saying.
That's true.
You see, Brother Nathan did a super chat, and he put, "Remove RJ's heavy organ."
When Juan was saying that they only have one organ, I think you needed to get that checked out.
Yeah. Okay, so there's another, just so we can move on to another example that brothers can take away from the fighting the resistance part. And it was one that was brought up. Let me see if I can find who it was, about contactless payments and cash payments and PayPal. Dear God, why in 2020 lodges, appendant bodies don't have PayPal accounts? Like,
Why
what
are
is
checks?
the deal?
Why are checks even still a thing?
Why
That
do
is-
you mention exactly?
True story. I
Well-
only write checks for lodge. Nothing else.
Here's some cronyism for you. There are lodges to which I know of and may be affiliated with in some way that have a PayPal account, and everybody knows PayPal has to be tied to somebody's social security number, usually the secretary. No big deal though. But the problem is when Grand Lodge sees that, they say, "Oh, you can't do that because that's tied to the secretary's social security number, and if somebody dies, then the wife or somebody can just take that account and empty it into their own, and we have no claim to it." Yeah, that's probably true. The likelihood of that happening, I guess it happened once, but they were like, you have to go through OLP. Oh, OLP, our lodge page on Maury. That's great. Also, a service just like PayPal, which is also tied to the secretary's social security number. It's like nobody does the due diligence in checking any of this stuff.
Yeah, and listen, there is collateral damage. Okay, in any war scenario, there is an understood and agreed upon level of collateral damage that is going to happen for a mission to go through. There's a buffer there. Okay, that's acceptable. Yeah, 3 civilians died. I'm sorry, they were too close to the bad guys. I'm sorry to hear it. Okay, there's going to be a lodge that has a PayPal account that the wife takes the money out. Take the damn money. But the suffering you would save all the brothers. You can't compare. She took what? What did she take? She took $500 in you know in 1% of lodges it happens, which is not, that's an exaggerated number. A quarter of not even an eighth of 1% of incidences. Oh, there was a loss. Okay, there was a loss. That's fine. But all the other brothers would have the convenience of being able to pay early, not on time, early.
Right.
Yeah,
ask me for a check,
frankly, though,
you'll get it.
the lodges that get ripped off for a substantial amount of money, it's usually the treasurer who embezzles it and makes off with upward of 500 grand.
Yeah, at least according to all the stuff that gets outed on Freemasons for Dummies blog. So yeah.
Yeah, in which case PayPal is actually a safer option because there's more traceability and there's some semblance of theft protection and
there
insurance.
You go. Yep. Yeah, this whole concept.
But that's none of my business.
Drink. This whole concept has got me thinking too, Juan, about there's an Austrian economist who went by the name of Joseph Schumpeter, and his claim to fame was this concept of creative destruction. Basically, some things need to die in order for there to be space for something better to come along, right? At least using your analogy of this old thing or this new thing, right? And so the best kind of blog I read about that years ago is like, have you ever driven by like a building or a storefront and you're like, I know that used to be a Pizza Hut because of the way the roof was shaped, right? You had that undeniable roof shape of a Pizza Hut, but it's not a Pizza Hut anymore. It's a Mexican restaurant now, or it's something else.
An IHOP.
Right. So the point is that while the business was destroyed, the building still stands. The employees still need a job, and so the foundation of the business had to be the bad business, because it wasn't being managed correctly. Otherwise, it would still be there. Had to go away so that something new could rise up, like a phoenix. Right? It had to have the space where, again, you talk about like just another economics idea of the infrastructure for building cars, for example. You see like these startups now, like Rivian, that are buying automobile factories, right? Because they are now going to retrofit them and build better vehicles, right? The people, there's still jobs that need to be there. There's still assembly lines, and so the same is also true for lodges. That some things need to be let go of. Some things need to be disrupted so that new things, new better things can come along. And you won't know if you hold on to the old for so long. So that's it's an interesting concept that we need to be more and more comfortable with, and that, again, to continue to push back against the resistance of, well, that's the way we've always done it.
And I wanted to accentuate a point. The fighting the resistance call that I'm talking about is not just for rebellion's sake. There is reason behind it. There is a desire for a lodge to thrive, for our organization to reclaim its place in society that it once held, and it was respected. And granted, I'm not saying that our organization is not respected at all, but for those who come into the lodge and perhaps go through some degrees and eventually just are lost to the system and they go back, do they have a positive experience to share with the people on the outside? Are they going to be saying that was the best thing that ever happened to me? I'm glad. Or are they going to say, oh my God, I went to every single meeting and all they talked about was fundraisers and this and the other, and the building was falling apart, and all they did was bicker about, an old organ or something. So it's not resistance for rebellion's sake. We love this fraternity. We see the potential it has to take a young man and change the prospects of his future. We understand what the teachings of this organization can do for a man who is in the development stages as an adult, and the effects that can have in his community and in society as a whole. So it is, in my opinion, it is our responsibility as the new face of leadership in Masonry,
Right.
to resist any kind of irrational obstacles to progress.
Yeah,
But how
that's
can
what
you
I was
tell
gonna.
whether or not it's truly irrational? How do you know the
Right. So
difference?
you know the difference by looking at logical fallacies and cognitive
Yes.
biases.
Oh my gosh. I
Yes.
totally
Right?
believe
Here
it.
we go.
So this is the basis of psychology. I mean, there's the concept of homeostasis, right, which is the concept that you're comfortable with something, regardless of how it is. So inject a new workout routine, and all of a sudden it sucks until you get used to it. There's a whole concept on neurology that talks about an old part of the human brain that literally causes emotional responses to change. And so by understanding that in itself, you kind of understand, like, it's like knowing that you're going to get high before you do drugs. Like, if you don't know that, you're like, oh, what's this magical stuff? And then, you get high or something. But if you know, like, it's somebody who gets drunk but knows that they're drunk. That's why they feel this way, right? So you feel angry because you should know that your brain is having a chemical response to a change, that something is being presented as a change. So number one, knowing is half the battle, right? It's the foundation of every 12-step program out there. So
G.I.
one,
Joe.
right? Knowing is half the battle. So if you know that you're predisposed, every human being is predisposed to having a negative reaction with change. The only reason we don't is because we've psychologically, brainwashed ourselves into
Prepared
accepting.
ourselves. Mm-hmm.
We've prepared. That's a good word to use. So with that, then comes this idea of how to approach the change. So you have to have a really good, not an argument, right? Like we talk about argument, like I'm yelling, not the argument you had with your mom, right? When you were, 15, the argument that's like, here's my position.
Dialectic.
Do you understand it?
Yep.
No, not quite what you're talking about. What if I said it's like this? Really understanding, what you guys are talking about. And then when it's clear what the benefit is and what the downside is, you make an informed decision on how to move forward. And that's the kind of change, really, that, I don't know, it's a very Masonic way to look at change, because we're all about order, understanding, arguments, rhetoric, all of these things, whether we actually apply them or not. But like I said, I think number one is, if my wife comes to me and goes, I got this idea for the backyard, I'm not going to lie. That happened this last weekend. And I was like, nah, we're moving in 3 years. I don't want to touch the backyard. And she's like, no, hear me out. I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, but.
Too late. You opened wrong.
She's like, but. I was like, and I sat down and I was like, I'm being stupid. What do you want to do? I just want to make a little garden in the backyard and put a little fountain with a thingy and whatever. Okay, let's do it. She did it. It's awesome. You know, I mean, you got to be open though.
Right.
I have something. I came across an article on the Harvard Business Review,
HBR.
and not to say that
nice.
Masonry should be treated like a business, but John,
You know,
what's that behind you? Yeah, let me read you the title of the article. It says, "Don't just tell employees organizational changes are coming. Explain why." And they offer 4 suggestions that I thought could be useful for how to approach change whenever you have something to propose for Lodge. And the first one is inspire people by presenting a compelling vision for the future. So paint a picture. Don't just say, brothers, I was thinking about getting rid of this old, using RJ's example, getting rid of this old organ that nobody ever plays. That is, if you translate it to grumpy, grumpy past master lingo, it says, I want to change Masonry forever. This right here is meaningless. Who was the idiot that kept it here this long?
Or like, if you were like, hey, let's spend $1,500 for a TV in the social hall, right? That's not the way to start. You're like, you want to start off with, hey, imagine this. Imagine that we had a social hall that was social, and we had all the families come out and watch Super Bowls together and other events. We could stream education programs and really give, our entered apprentices and fellow crafts something to do, to give some presentations in social hall. Imagine what that reality would look like. And I'm going to offer up that we accomplish that by buying a TV.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. You put a vision. It's like when you're trying to sell something. Like, people don't buy when I sell my paintings, for example. I'll give you a concrete example. And I have a painting, let's say the one behind Jason, the Unlocking Time. Yeah, one of those. I don't say, well, I use a high pigment.
Sorry, I was pointing to the original paintings that I have, both of them.
Oh, excuse me. You are a connoisseur, sir.
Yes.
So,
anyway,
when I try to sell a painting, I don't say, well, I print these in 100-pound cold press watercolor paper, and I use fine charcoal from the remains of a hut in the Himalayas. Like, people don't care. When I tell people, I created this piece because time is an elusive yet important part of our lives, and having access to the symbols that will remind us of that fragility and elusiveness will keep us in touch with the important things like our family, our responsibilities, etc. Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, but they don't care about the watercolor paper. They don't care about none of that. Same goes when you're presenting an idea for your launch. They don't want to hear, I want to throw away this old junk because it doesn't work anymore. Perhaps your vision is you want to have a place where you can have that Bluetooth speaker for music to be synchronized to the degrees. You can open up by saying, brothers, imagine if when a brand new candidate is walking in, he is listening to the whatever symphony, the fifth blah 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 of McDoobity Doobity. And people will be like, oh, wow, that'll be so amazing. And imagine that in this particular scene of the Master Mason degree, when this is happening, you have a background sound of the ocean. Oh, man, how amazing that would be. We can't do that with that organ, but I do have an idea. I have a Bluetooth speaker that you can connect, and we can have that happening on the next degree. Now, people can sign up to that idea, and they'll have less resistance. But how are we going to do that? Don't worry about it. I got this.
I love it.
It's not work for you.
So before you get to the number 2, just a couple of the other improvement metaphors. I love the chats here. So remember Monster House? We have TMR Monster Lodge. 5 days to freshen up a lodge. That's a good one. And my personal favorite so far, Pimp My Lodge. It can happen. Let's make it happen. All right, what's number 2, Juan?
The number 2, it says keep employees informed by providing regular communications. So you brought it up that you wanted to put this Bluetooth speaker. On the next meeting, you can say, brothers, I have good news. Remember that vision I shared with you last time about having music synchronized to the degrees? I found a Bluetooth speaker that can fill this whole room and blah, blah, blah. And I tested it out and I checked the price and it's way below what I expected it could be. But you're giving them updates about it. I said, I've actually put together a playlist. I can share it with any brother who wants to hear it. It's on iTunes. I'll share the playlist with you so you can play it at home and hear what brothers are going to hear. And you give people updates of the progress that you're making in that vision. The next one is empower leaders and managers to lead through change. So getting people involved in the process, especially people who want to lead. Don't be forcing people to lead, right? People that want to be involved. Perhaps you have a brother that is very tech savvy. He is really good with music, or you have a brother who's a DJ, or you have a brother who's a podcaster. Utilize those skills, empower them to actually put those skills that they excel in for the service of the lodge. And then now it's not just you with an idea. Now you continue to build this idea into a team that can actually make it a reality. And the other one, it says find creative ways to involve employees in the change. In this case, find creative ways of involving people in that particular project, which is almost an extension of that leading one. But imagine so that we can
give them a job to do.
Yeah.
Hey,
give them a job
I want
to do.
you to be the guy who sets it all up, because I know you have a background in cabling and networking. I want you to be the one to pick out the music for the next degree.
Exactly.
Yeah, way back in the early 2000s when Chris Hodap edited Knights of the North's response to Dwight L. Smith, Laudable Pursuit, I think he says, give him something to do. Well, it's a great secret. I don't know why people just wait around. You ever do that? Like the typical example is, oh, nobody learns any lectures anymore. Well, you know what the old really successful masters say? And it usually works. You just walk up to somebody and you say, I need you to learn this. This is your job now. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens. Give people a job and they step into it, even if it's something brand new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those are the 4 things they recommend. And of course, this was just from one article relating to how you can implement some of these strategies for change. You can adapt those into the lodge. This doesn't mean that you're turning your lodge into a business. And that is such a weak argument. And I keep on hearing it all the time. It's such a weak argument. Oh, but the lodge is not a business. Well, then you know nothing about business. You're
Right.
talking about you know nothing about business, because
Do you invest in the organization
Yes.
through money,
Yes.
time, or do you
Time.
give something up to contribute in some way to the organization? And
Yes.
do you get a return on that investment?
Is there anything valuable you're getting out of Masonry?
Yes. Are you putting anything into it? Are you getting anything out of it? If the answer is yes for both of those, then it is a transactional service or a business
Oh,
arrangement.
that's so cold, though. Don't think of it like that, Jason. That's not a fraternity. That's transactional.
But it's so much more.
But it's yes.
Okay,
But
great.
But
So
even
it's-
there-
it's got a really good
even-
value proposition. Yay. It's a good business. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But even there, you witness the toxicity of the resistance. When you have someone who just puts up this shield of, well, but lodge is not a business. All they're telling you is like, it doesn't matter what you tell me from this point forward. You are not going to change my mind that I can treat lodge as a business. And I'm not advocating that you treat it strictly as a business. We're not in it to make money. We're in it
You've
to
lost. Yeah.
We
But
are in
by-
it
by
to
feeding that-
provide value and gain more investment from members.
Yeah, but like when you just jump on somebody that's not a business and you attack it that way, you literally lose intellectual high ground immediately. In my book.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like
You're like
the problem is
Anakin
like
Skywalker, about to get 2 legs and an arm cut off.
I had the high ground. I love
Underestimate my power.
Absolute power.
So let's bring this back home. We're here about talking about fighting against the resistance, and it's for all the right reasons, right? We know what good change looks like. We know how there are things that we've been used to that are not acceptable in other organizations, right? You can't walk into a Fortune 500 company and see them, snail mailing out newsletters anymore. And so,
where's your fax machine?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some lodges still with fax machines, right? So, and it's not a technology problem either. A lot of this also could be fixed with which other processes and other improvements and other jobs like we talked about to give the brothers some strength. So just wanted to put a bow on tonight's topic because it's not all doom and gloom, because we are prepping you for episode 300, which is going to be at a one-time special event, new date and time just for episode 300, which we're going to have on Memorial Day. So that's right, just a couple of days away on Monday, this Memorial Day, we'll have episode 300, a special event where we're actually going to talk about the new future. What does a post-COVID fraternity look like? How can we take all the lessons learned, all the things that we've had to adapt to in our personal, our work lives, our personal lives, our social lives, and when we all come back to this new normal, what does a new normal look like for your lodge? Now we get to create. We push back against that resistance.
It's not going to look like it did in December of 2019.
What?
I'm going to spoil that for you now.
Spoiler alert.
Because if it does, we've failed.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to plant this vision in your mind, brothers. Those of you who are listening or watching, when will we have an opportunity again to hit the reset button like we have in 2020 with this pandemic? Meaning, we've been for a long time talking about telecommuting or working from home. We've been talking about all these different things. And in an instant, in a matter of months, the whole planet basically ground to a halt. And we've been forced to evaluate how we're doing things and how we need to do them differently. If we miss out on this opportunity, now that the reset button has been pressed, where basically it's almost like we paused everything and had an opportunity to try an alternate way of doing things. If we don't capitalize on this opportunity to bring forth positive change, prosperity, and an improvement to our fraternity, we have failed those who come after us. No pressure.
No pressure, but here we go. Let's start bringing it home to close out fighting the resistance so that we can create a better tomorrow. Jason Richards, bring it home for us.
Never settle for because that's the way we've always done it. That's lazy and stupid, and it is never a way to. It's never a reason for holding up change and progress. You got to do better than that. Thanks for watching, especially the last 299 episodes. Looking forward to being with you all for 300 more. Back to you, John.
Nice. All right, let's head it over to Robert Johnson. Over to you.
Well, just like, 299 episodes, we've made changes in this show, and
Yes.
we switched nights before, and we just roll with it, and things have become better. And, there's 1,000,001 quotes on change. One that I always liked is Martin Luther King. He said, as many of the quotes that are out there on change, and if you type in MLK change, the quote that'll come up is change does not roll in the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. And what he's talking about is that obviously a far superior issue of social justice. But when you think about just the base level of change, it's not like, 1,000,000 little things are rolling in a wheel and eventually the right stuff is going to pop out in the right order. It requires a continuous struggle to organize and to line up and to make an effort to reach into the wheel and grab the right stuff out. So there's a constant struggle there, and I think as long as you understand the reasons why people are resistant to change. So it doesn't take a PhD in psychology or something. You can just read a basic article on how to approach change. One, two, there's 1,000,001 great articles out there on business change. I think Forbes had a great one out there. It was like 10 reasons why employees hate change and how to work with that. While we may not be a business, a fraternity, we certainly have people who are like employees, and those are our constituents, those are our members, our patrons, whatever you want to call them. It's cool to go ahead and educate yourself a little bit on the best way to do this. Gary Meisner brought up a great point that whenever he made a good change at his home lodge, he would always bring it to the lodge as a draft. He would have written out plan paper and everybody would get a copy. And this does a couple things. It shows that you're invested enough to do something like this. Two, you've done something very professional and it's recognized as such by the lodge members, and they see your effort and how much you actually gave a darn to do it. And hopefully, three, within your argument, you've talked about the benefits. And if there are some negatives, you've talked about those too. But with the right changes, the benefits outweigh any of the negatives. I just think as long as we're doing that and we're being kind in the way we do these things, we make the right changes, things get better, and we move forward. And so next week when we talk about all these post-COVID lodges, we'll see, maybe you'll gain some insights on what challenges you might next face as we return to lodges here in the coming months. But thanks for tuning in every week over the last I don't know, whatever it is, 6 years or something crazy like that. I don't know. But thanks.
And thanks for the super chats, Joe and Kevin, but especially Joe.
Especially Joe. Love you, bro.
All right, over to Juan.
All right, brothers. Well, I really hope that you got something out of today's conversation. We say it all the time, like, we love Masonry and we want the best for it. We recognize the potential it has to change a man's life. It really contains tools that can help a man become a better, more productive member of society. And I want nothing more than to do a good job while I am part of it, so that others who come after me are able to enjoy those lessons and apply them to their lives. And it's one of the ways in which we can leave a little bit of ourselves in posterity. It's how we are able to reach that mythical eternity, is by contributing positively while we're here in this brief time. So let's make good use of this time and really make sure that we leave a legacy of positive change. And I have a quote that I wanted to close with. It is from Shmi Skywalker, mother of Anakin. You can't stop change any more than you can stop the suns from setting. And I encourage you, brothers, to have control over the changes that happen and make sure that you are making sure that those are positive ones. If you want to make positive changes in your life as a man and a Mason, I encourage you to go to appliedfreemasonry.com and join our Strong Foundation course. It's available right now, and it's going to get better exponentially over the next few weeks. So thank you again. Good night.
All right, so over to me to bring things home. Look, Lodge is a business. Changed my mind, right? So do want to give again a special shout out to the super chats. Joe gave a generous donation talking about hashtag reset button 300. That's really what this is all about. Well, let's hit the reset button. Let's manifest that new reality where Kevin Hovind, not to let Joe go unchallenged, gave 1 penny more than the already generous donation of Joe with the super chat just to beat Joe, in which Joe retorted with a 1 penny greater donation to hashtag be the change, hashtag Kevin sucks. So we got to read them. So if you throw a super chat in, we got to read it. So anyway,
No, we really don't.
not all of them. The PG
Not all
ones.
of them.
But this has been fun because we do try to keep things positive here. But again, there's a time where we can, in the most positive way, do some critical analysis of what's working, what's not. And if it's not working, then we have the right as brothers to challenge these assumptions, to push forward so we can make our fraternity better than it currently is. And there's, if back to something that Juan and I talk about a lot, that Kaizen just means you're getting 1% better every day. And shouldn't we also expect that out of our fraternity and out of our lodges? And so that's what we're advocating for. Where RJ and I stand on that. If you want to hear a little bit more about how we feel a lot of these business practices can be applied to running, maintaining your lodges, good for officers, go check out It's Business Time, Adapting a Corporate Path for Freemasonry. That is something that will give you a little bit more context into how to actually apply a lot of the mindset that we've been talking about tonight, so that when you get to this upcoming episode 300, you're going to learn a lot about how we're going to, all of us, are going to create a better tomorrow. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.
Wow.
Fight the resistance.